Buddha, the Gospel, by Paul Carus. The disciple speaks. Rejoice at the glad tidings. The Buddha, our Lord, has found the root of all evil. He has shown us the way of salvation. The Buddha dispels the illusions of our mind and redeems us from the terror of death. The Buddha, our Lord, brings comfort to the weary and sorrow-laden. He restores peace to those who are broken down under the burden of life. He gives courage to the weak when they would fain give up self-reliance and hope. You who suffer from the tribulations of life, you who have to struggle and endure, you who yearn for a life of truth, rejoice at the glad tidings. There is balm for the wounded, and there is bread for the hungry. There is water for the thirsty, and there is hope for the despairing. There is light for those in darkness, and there is inexhaustible blessing for the upright. Heal your wounds, you wounded, and eat your fill, you hungry. Rest, you weary, and you who are thirsty quench your thirst. Look up to the light, you who sit in darkness. Be full of good cheer, you who are forlorn. Trust in truth, you who love the truth, for the kingdom of righteousness is founded upon earth. The darkness of error is dispelled by the light of truth. We can see our way and take firm and certain steps. The Buddha, our Lord, has revealed the truth. The truth cures our diseases and redeems us from perdition. The truth strengthens us in life and in death. The truth alone can conquer the evils of error. Rejoice at the glad tidings. Samsara and Nirvana. Look about and contemplate life. Everything is transient and nothing endures. There is birth and death, growth and decay. There is combination and separation. The glory of the world is like a flower. It stands in full bloom in the morning and fades in the heat of the day. Wherever you look, there is a rushing and a struggling, and an eager pursuit of pleasure. There is a panic flight from pain and death, and hot are the flames of burning desires. The world is Vanity Fair, full of changes and transformations. All is samsara, the turning wheel of existence. Is there nothing permanent in the world? Is there in the universal turmoil no resting place where our troubled heart can find peace? Is there nothing everlasting? Oh, that we could have cessation of anxiety, that our burning desires would be extinguished. When shall the mind become tranquil and composed? The Buddha, our Lord, was grieved at the ills of life. He saw the vanity of worldly happiness and sought salvation in the one thing that will not fade or perish, but will abide forever and ever. You who long for life, learn that immortality is hidden in transiency. You who wish for happiness without the sting of regret, lead a life of righteousness. You who yearn for riches, receive treasures that are eternal. Truth is wealth, and a life of truth is happiness. All compounds will be dissolved again, but the verities which determine all combinations and separations as laws of nature endure forever and ever. Bodies fall to dust, but the truths of the mind will not be destroyed. Truth knows neither birth nor death. It has no beginning and no end. Welcome the truth. The truth is the immortal part of mind. Establish the truth in your mind, for the truth is the image of the eternal. It portrays the immutable. It reveals the everlasting. The truth gives unto mortals the boon of immortality. The Buddha has proclaimed the truth. Let the truth of the Buddha dwell in your hearts. Extinguish in yourselves every desire that antagonizes the Buddha, and in the perfection of your spiritual growth you will become like unto him. That of your heart which cannot or will not develop into Buddha must perish, for it is mere illusion and unreal. It is the source of your error. It is the cause of your misery. You attain to immortality by filling your minds with truth. Therefore, become like unto vessels fit to receive the Master's words. Cleanse yourselves of evil and sanctify your lives. There is no other way of reaching truth. Learn to distinguish between self and truth. Self is the cause of selfishness and the source of evil. Truth cleaves to no self. It is universal and leads to justice and righteousness. Self, that which seems to those who love their self as their being, is not the eternal, the everlasting, the imperishable. Seek not self, but seek the truth. If we liberate our souls from our petty selves, wish no ill to others, and become clear as a crystal diamond reflecting the light of truth, what a radiant picture will appear in us, mirroring things as they are, without the admixture of burning desires, without the distortion of erroneous illusion, without the agitation of clinging and unrest. Yet you love self and will not abandon self-love. So be it, but then, verily, you should learn to distinguish between the false self and the true self. The ego with all its egotism is the false self. It is an unreal illusion and a perishable combination. He only who identifies his self with the truth will attain nirvana. And he who has entered nirvana has attained Buddhahood. He has acquired the highest good. He has become eternal and immortal. All compound things shall be dissolved again, worlds will break to pieces and our individualities will be scattered, but the words of Buddha will remain forever. The extinction of self is salvation. The annihilation of self is the condition of enlightenment. The blotting out of self is nirvana. Happy is he who has ceased to live for pleasure and rests in the truth. Verily his composure and tranquility of mind are the highest bliss. Let us take our refuge in the Buddha, for he has found the everlasting in the transient. Let us take our refuge in that which is the immutable in the changes of existence. Let us take our refuge in the truth that is established through the enlightenment of the Buddha. Let us take our refuge in the community of those who seek the truth and endeavor to live in the truth. Truth, the Savior. The things of the world and its inhabitants are subject to change. They are combinations of elements that existed before, and all living creatures are what their past actions made them, for the law of cause and effect is uniform and without exception. But in the changing things there is a constancy of law, and when the law is seen there is truth. The truth lies hidden in samsara as the permanent in its changes. Truth desires to appear. Truth longs to become conscious. Truth strives to know itself. There is truth in the stone, for the stone is here. And no power in the world, no God, no man, no demon, can destroy its existence. But the stone has no consciousness. There is truth in the plant and its life can expand. The plant grows and blossoms and bears fruit. Its beauty is marvelous, but it has no consciousness. There is truth in the animal. It moves about and perceives its surroundings. It distinguishes and learns to choose. There is consciousness, but it is not yet the consciousness of truth. It is a consciousness of self only. The consciousness of self dims the eyes of the mind and hides the truth. It is the origin of error. It is the source of illusion. It is the germ of evil. Self begets selfishness. There is no evil but what flows from self. There is no wrong but what is done by the assertion of self. Self is the beginning of all hatred, of iniquity and slander, of impudence and indecency, of theft and robbery, of oppression and bloodshed. Self is Mara, the tempter, the evil doer, the creator of mischief. Self entices with pleasures. Self promises a fairy's paradise. Self is the veil of Maya, the enchanter. But the pleasures of self are unreal. Its paradisian labyrinth is the road to misery, and its fading beauty kindles the flames of desires that never can be satisfied. Who shall deliver us from the power of self? Who shall save us from misery? Who shall restore us to a life of blessedness? There is misery in the world of samsara. There is much misery and pain. But greater than all the misery is the bliss of truth. Truth gives peace to the yearning mind. It conquers error. It quenches the flames of desires. It leads to nirvana. Blessed is he who has found the peace of nirvana. He is at rest in the struggles and tribulations of life. He is above all changes. He is above birth and death. He remains unaffected by the evils of life. Blessed is he who has found enlightenment. He conquers, although he may be wounded. He is glorious and happy, although he may suffer. He is strong, although he may break down under the burden of his work. He is immortal, although he will die. The essence of his being is purity and goodness. Blessed is he who has attained the sacred state of Buddhahood, for he is fit to work out the salvation of his fellow beings. The truth has taken its abode in him. Perfect wisdom illumines his understanding, and righteousness ensouls the purpose of all his actions. The truth is a living power for good, indestructible and invincible. Work the truth out in your mind, and spread it among mankind, for truth alone is the savior from evil and misery. The Buddha has found the truth, and the truth has been proclaimed by the Buddha. Blessed be the Buddha. The Enlightenment. There was in Kapilavatthu a Sakya king, strong of purpose and reverenced by all men, a descendant of the Okakas, who call themselves Gautama, and his name was Suddhodana, or pure rice. His wife Maya Devi was beautiful as the water lily and pure in mind as the lotus. As the Queen of Heaven, she lived on earth, untainted by desire, and immaculate. The king, her husband, honored her in her holiness, and the Spirit of Truth, glorious and strong in his wisdom like unto a white elephant, descended upon her. When she knew that the hour of motherhood was near, she asked the king to send her home to her parents, and Suddhodana, anxious about his wife and the child she would bear him, willingly granted her request. At Lumbini there is a beautiful grove, and when Maya Devi passed through it the trees were one mass of fragrant flowers and many birds were warbling in their branches. The queen, wishing to stroll through the shady walks, left her golden palanquin, and, when she reached the giant sala tree in the midst of the grove, felt that her hour had come. She took hold of a branch. Her attendants hung a curtain about her and retired. When the pain of travail came upon her, 4 pure-minded angels of the great Brahma held out a golden net to receive the babe, who came forth from her right side like the rising sun, bright and perfect. The Brahma angels took the child and placing him before the mother said, "Rejoice, O Queen, a mighty son has been born unto thee." At her couch stood an aged woman imploring the heavens to bless the child. All the worlds were flooded with light. The blind received their sight by longing to see the coming glory of the Lord. The deaf and dumb spoke with one another of the good omens, indicating the birth of the Buddha to be. The crooked became straight. The lame walked. All prisoners were freed from their chains and the fires of all the hells were extinguished. No clouds gathered in the skies and the polluted streams became clear, whilst celestial music rang through the air and the angels rejoiced with gladness. With no selfish or partial joy, but for the sake of the law they rejoiced, for creation engulfed in the ocean of pain was now to obtain release. The cries of beasts were hushed. All malevolent beings received a loving heart, and peace reigned on earth. Mara, the evil one, alone was grieved and rejoiced not. The Naga kings, earnestly desiring to show their reverence for most excellent law, as they had paid honor to former Buddhas, now went to greet the Bodhisattva. They scattered before him mandara flowers, rejoicing with heartfelt joy to pay their religious homage. The royal father, pondering the meaning of these signs, was now full of joy and now sore distressed. The Queen Mother, beholding her child and the commotion which his birth created, felt in her timorous heart the pangs of doubt. Now there was at that time in a grove near Lumbini a Sita, a rishi, leading the life of a hermit. He was a Brahmin of dignified mien, famed not only for wisdom and scholarship, but also for his skill in the interpretation of signs. And the king invited him to see the royal babe. The seer, beholding the prince, wept and sighed deeply. And when the king saw the tears of Asita, he became alarmed and asked, "Why has the sight of my son caused thee grief and pain?" But Asita's heart rejoiced, and, knowing the king's mind to be perplexed, he addressed him, saying, "The king, like the moon when full, should feel great joy, for he has begotten a wondrously noble son. I do not worship Brahma, but I worship this child, and the gods in the temples will descend from their places of honor to adore him. Banish all anxiety and doubt. The spiritual omens manifested indicate that the child now born will bring deliverance to the whole world. Recollecting that I myself am old, on that account I could not hold my tears, for now my end is coming on and I shall not see the glory of this babe. For this son of thine will rule the world. The wheel of empire will come to him. He will either be a king of kings to govern all the lands of the earth, or verily will become a Buddha. He is born for the sake of everything that lives. His pure teaching will be like the shore that receives the shipwrecked. His power of meditation will be like a cool lake, and all creatures parched with the drought of lust may freely drink thereof. On the fire of covetousness he will cause the cloud of his mercy to rise, so that the rain of the law may extinguish it. The heavy gates of despondency will he open, and give deliverance to all creatures ensnared in the self-entwined meshes of folly and ignorance. The King of the law has come forth to rescue from bondage all the poor, the miserable, the helpless. When the royal parents heard Asita's words, they rejoiced in their hearts and named their newborn infant Siddhartha, that is, he who has accomplished his purpose. And the queen said to her sister, Pajapati, a mother who has borne a future Buddha will never give birth to another child. I shall soon leave this world, my husband, the king, and Siddhartha, my child. When I am gone, be thou a mother to him. And Pajapati wept and promised. When the queen had departed from the living, Pajapati took the boy Siddhartha and reared him. And as the light of the moon increases little by little, so the royal child grew from day to day in mind and in body, and truthfulness and love resided in his heart. When a year had passed, Suddhodana the king made Pajapati his queen, and there was never a better stepmother than she. The ties of life. When Siddhartha had grown to youth, his father desired to see him married, and he sent to all his kinsfolk, commanding them to bring their princesses that the prince might select one of them as his wife. But the kinsfolk replied and said, "The prince is young and delicate, nor has he learned any of the sciences. He would not be able to maintain our daughter, and should there be war he would be unable to cope with the enemy." The prince was not boisterous, but pensive in his nature. He loved to stay under the great jambu tree in the garden of his father, and, observing the ways of the world, gave himself up to meditation. And the prince said to his father, "Invite our kinsfolk that they may see me and put my strength to the test." And his father did as his son bade him. When the kinsfolk came, and the people of the city Kapilavatthu had assembled to test the prowess and scholarship of the prince, he proved himself manly in all the exercises both of the body and of the mind, and there was no rival among the youths and men of India who could surpass him in any test, bodily or mental. He replied to all the questions of the sages, but when he questioned them, even the wisest among them were silenced. Then Siddhartha chose himself a wife. He selected his cousin Yasodhara, the gentle daughter of the king of Koli. In their wedlock was born a son whom they named Rahula, which means fetter or tie, and King Suddhodana, glad that an heir was born to his son, said, "The prince, having begotten a son, will love him as I love the prince. This will be a strong tie to bind Siddhartha's heart to the interests of the world, and the kingdom of the Sakyas will remain under the scepter of my descendants." With no selfish aim, but regarding his child and the people at large, Siddhartha, the prince, attended to his religious duties, bathing his body in the holy Ganges and cleansing his heart in the waters of the law. Even as men desire to give happiness to their children, so did he long to give peace to the world. The Three Woes. The palace which the king had given to the prince was resplendent with all the luxuries of India, for the king was anxious to see his son happy. All sorrowful sights, all misery, and all knowledge of misery were kept away from Siddhartha, for the king desired that no troubles should come nigh him. He should not know that there was evil in the world. But as the chained elephant longs for the wilds of the jungles, So the prince was eager to see the world, and he asked his father, the king, for permission to do so. And Suddhodana ordered a jewel-fronted chariot with 4 stately horses to be held ready, and commanded the roads to be adorned where his son would pass. The houses of the city were decorated with curtains and banners, and spectators arranged themselves on either side, eagerly gazing at the heir to the throne. Thus Siddhartha rode with Channa, his charioteer, through the streets of the city, and into a country watered by rivulets and covered with pleasant trees. There by the wayside they met an old man with bent frame, wrinkled face and sorrowful brow, and the prince asked the charioteer, "Who is this? His head is white, his eyes are bleared, and his body is withered. He can barely support himself on his staff." The charioteer, much embarrassed, hardly dared speak the truth. He said, "These are the symptoms of old age. This same man was once a suckling child, and as a youth full of sportive life. But now, as years have passed away, his beauty is gone and the strength of his life is wasted." Siddhartha was greatly affected by the words of the charioteer, and he sighed because of the pain of old age. "What joy or pleasure can men take," he thought to himself, "when they know they must soon wither and pine away?" And lo, while they were passing on, a sick man appeared on the wayside, gasping for breath, his body disfigured, convulsed and groaning with pain. The prince asked his charioteer, "What kind of man is this?" And the charioteer replied and said, "This man is sick. The 4 elements of his body are confused and out of order. We are all subject to such conditions, the poor and the rich, the ignorant and the wise, all creatures that have bodies are liable to the same calamity." And Siddhartha was still more moved. All pleasures appeared stale to him, and he loathed the joys of life. The charioteer sped the horses on to escape the dreary sight, when suddenly they were stopped in their fiery course. 4 persons passed by, carrying a corpse, and the prince, shuddering at the sight of a lifeless body, asked the charioteer, "What is this they carry?" "There are streamers and flower garlands, but the men that follow are overwhelmed with grief." The charioteer replied, "This is a dead man. His body is stark. His life is gone. His thoughts are still. His family and the friends who loved him now carry the corpse to the grave." And the prince was full of awe and terror. "Is this the only dead man?" he asked, "or does the world contain other instances?" With a heavy heart, the charioteer replied, "All over the world it is the same. He who begins life must end it. There is no escape from death." With bated breath and stammering accents the prince exclaimed, "O worldly men! How fatal is your delusion! Inevitably your body will crumble to dust, yet carelessly, unheedingly, ye live on." The charioteer, observing the deep impression these sad sights had made on the prince, turned his horses and drove back to the city. When they passed by the palace of the nobility, Kissa Gotami, a young princess and niece of the king, saw Siddhartha in his manliness and beauty, and, observing the thoughtfulness of his countenance, said, "Happy the father that begot thee, happy the mother that nursed thee, happy the wife that calls husband this Lord so glorious." The prince, hearing this greeting, said, "Happy are they that have found deliverance." Longing for peace of mind, I shall seek the bliss of nirvana. Then asked Kissa Gotami, how is nirvana attained? The prince paused, and to him whose mind was estranged from wrong the answer came. When the fire of lust is gone out, then nirvana is gained. When the fires of hatred and delusion are gone out, then nirvana is gained. When the troubles of mind, arising from blind credulity, and all other evils have ceased, then nirvana is gained. Siddhartha handed her his precious pearl necklace as a reward for the wisdom she had inspired in him, and having returned home looked with disdain upon the treasures of his palace. His wife welcomed him and entreated him to tell her the cause of his grief. He said, I see everywhere the impression of change, therefore my heart is heavy. Men grow old, sicken, and die. That is enough to take away the zest of life. The king, his father, hearing that the prince had become estranged from pleasure, was greatly overcome with sorrow, and like a sword it pierced his heart. The Bodhisattva's renunciation. It was night. The prince found no rest on his soft pillow. He arose and went out into the garden. Alas! He cried, all the world is full of darkness and ignorance. There is no one who knows how to cure the ills of existence. And he groaned with pain. Siddhartha sat down beneath the great jambu tree and gave himself to thought, pondering on life and death and the evils of decay. Concentrating his mind, he became free from confusion. All low desires vanished from his heart and perfect tranquility came over him. In this state of ecstasy he saw with his mental eye all the misery and sorrow of the world. He saw the pains of pleasure and the inevitable certainty of death that hovers over every being. Yet men are not awakened to the truth. And a deep compassion seized his heart. While the prince was pondering on the problem of evil, he beheld with his mind's eye under the jambu tree a lofty figure endowed with majesty, calm and dignified. Whence comest thou? And who mayst thou be? Asked the prince. In reply the vision said, I am a samana, troubled at the thought of old age, disease, and death. I have left my home to seek the path of salvation. All things hasten to decay, only the truth abideth forever. Everything changes, and there is no permanency. Yet the words of the Buddhas are immutable. I long for the happiness that does not decay, the treasure that will never perish, the life that knows of no beginning and no end. Therefore, I have destroyed all worldly thought. I have retired into an unfrequented dell to live in solitude, and, begging for food, I devote myself to the one thing needful. Siddhartha asked, can peace be gained in this world of unrest? I am struck with the emptiness of pleasure and have become disgusted with lust. All oppresses me, and existence itself seems intolerable. The samana replied, where heat is, there is also a possibility of cold. Creatures subject to pain possess the faculty of pleasure. The origin of evil indicates that good can be developed. For these things are correlatives. Thus, where there is much suffering, there will be much bliss, if thou but open thine eyes to behold it. Just as a man who has fallen into a heap of filth ought to seek the great pond of water covered with lotuses, which is nearby, even so seek thou for the great deathless lake of nirvana to wash off the defilement of wrong. If the lake is not sought, it is not the fault of the lake. Even so, when there is a blessed road leading the man held fast by wrong to the salvation of nirvana, if the road is not walked upon, it is not the fault of the road, but of the person. And when a man who is oppressed with sickness, there being a physician who can heal him, does not avail himself of the physician's help, that is not the fault of the physician. Even so, when a man oppressed by the malady of wrong-doing does not seek the spiritual guide of enlightenment, that is no fault of the evil-destroying guide. The prince listened to the noble words of his visitor and said, "Thou bringest good tidings, for now I know that my purpose will be accomplished. My father advises me to enjoy life and to undertake worldly duties, such as will bring honor to me and to our house. He tells me that I am too young still, that my pulse beats too full to lead a religious life." The venerable figure shook his head and replied, "Thou shouldst know that for seeking a religious life no time can be inopportune." A thrill of joy passed through Siddhartha's heart. "Now is the time to seek religion," he said. "Now is the time to sever all ties that would prevent me from attaining perfect enlightenment. Now is the time to wander into homelessness and, leading a mendicant's life, to find the path of deliverance." The celestial messenger heard the resolution of Siddhartha with approval. "Now, indeed," he added, "is the time to seek religion. Go, Siddhartha, and accomplish thy purpose. For thou art Bodhisattva, the Buddha elect. Thou art destined to enlighten the world. Thou art the Tathagata, the great master, for thou wilt fulfill all righteousness and be Dharmaraja, the king of truth. Thou art Bhagavat, the blessed one, for thou art called upon to become the savior and redeemer of the world. Fulfill thou the perfection of truth. Though the thunderbolt descend upon thy head, yield thou never to the allurements that beguile men from the path of truth. As the sun at all seasons pursues his own course, nor ever goes on another, even so if thou forsake not the straight path of righteousness, thou shalt become a Buddha. Persevere in thy quest and thou shalt find what thou seekest. Pursue thy aim unswervingly and thou shalt gain the prize. Struggle earnestly and thou shalt conquer. The benediction of all deities, of all saints, of all that seek light is upon thee, and heavenly wisdom guides thy steps. Thou shalt be the Buddha, our Master, and our Lord. Thou shalt enlighten the world and save mankind from perdition." Having thus spoken, the vision vanished, and Siddhartha's heart was filled with peace. He said to himself, "I have awakened to the truth and I am resolved to accomplish my purpose. I will sever all the ties that bind me to the world, and I will go out from my home to seek the way of salvation." The Buddhas are beings whose words cannot fail. There is no departure from truth in their speech. For as the fall of a stone thrown into the air, as the death of a mortal, as the sunrise at dawn, as the lion's roar when he leaves his lair, as the delivery of a woman with child, as all these things are sure and certain, even so the word of the Buddhas is sure and cannot fail. Verily I shall become a Buddha. The prince returned to the bedroom of his wife to take a last farewell glance at those whom he dearly loved above all the treasures of the earth. He longed to take the infant once more into his arms and kiss him with a parting kiss. But the child lay in the arms of his mother, and the prince could not lift him without awakening both. There Siddhartha stood gazing at his beautiful wife and his beloved son, and his heart grieved. The pain of parting overcame him powerfully, although his mind was determined, so that nothing, be it good or evil, could shake his resolution. The tears flowed freely from his eyes, and it was beyond his power to check their stream. But the prince tore himself away with a manly heart, suppressing his feelings but not extinguishing his memory. The Bodhisattva mounted his noble steed Kantaka, and when he left the palace, Mara stood in the gate and stopped him. "Depart not, O my lord," exclaimed Mara. "In 7 days from now the wheel of empire will appear, and will make thee sovereign over the 4 continents and the 2,000 adjacent islands. Therefore, stay, my lord." The Bodhisattva replied, "Well do I know that the wheel of empire will appear to me, but it is not sovereignty that I desire. I will become a Buddha and make all the world shout for joy." Thus Siddhartha, the prince, renounced power and worldly pleasures, gave up his kingdom, severed all ties, and went into homelessness. He rode out into the silent night, accompanied only by his faithful charioteer Channa. Darkness lay upon the earth, but the stars shone brightly in the heavens. King Bimbisara. Siddhartha had cut his waving hair and had exchanged his royal robe for a mean dress of the color of the ground. Having sent home Channa, the charioteer, together with the noble steed Kantaka, to King Suddhodana to bear him the message that the prince had left the world, the Bodhisattva walked along on the highroad with a beggar's bowl in his hand. Yet the majesty of his mind was ill concealed under the poverty of his appearance. His erect gait betrayed his royal birth, and his eyes beamed with a fervid zeal for truth. The beauty of his youth was transfigured by holiness and surrounded his head like a halo. All the people who saw this unusual sight gazed at him in wonder. Those who were in haste arrested their steps and looked back, and there was no one who did not pay him homage. Having entered the city of Rajagaha, the prince went from house to house silently waiting till the people offered him food. Wherever the Blessed One came, the people gave him what they had. They bowed before him in humility and were filled with gratitude because he condescended to approach their homes. Old and young people were moved and said, "This is a noble Muni. His approach is bliss. What a great joy for us." And King Bimbisara, noticing the commotion in the city, inquired the cause of it, and when he learned the news sent one of his attendants to observe the stranger. Having heard that the Muni must be a Sakya and of noble family, and that he had retired to the bank of a flowing river in the woods to eat the food in his bowl, the king was moved in his heart. He donned his royal robe, placed his golden crown upon his head and went out in the company of aged and wise counselors to meet his mysterious guest. The king found the Muni of the Sakya race seated under a tree. Contemplating the composure of his face and the gentleness of his deportment, Bimbisara greeted him reverently and said, "O Samana, thy hands are fit to grasp the reins of an empire and should not hold a beggar's bowl. I am sorry to see thee wasting thy youth. Believing that thou art of royal descent, I invite thee to join me in the government of my country and share my royal power. Desire for power is becoming to the noble-minded, and wealth should not be despised. To grow rich and lose religion is not true gain. But he who possesses all three, power, wealth, and religion, enjoying them in discretion and with wisdom, him I call a great master. The great Sakyamuni lifted his eyes and replied, Thou art known, O king, to be liberal and religious, and thy words are prudent. A kind man who makes good use of wealth is rightly said to possess a great treasure, but the miser who hoards up his riches will have no profit. Charity is rich in returns. Charity is the greatest wealth, for though it scatters, it brings no repentance. I have severed all ties because I seek deliverance. How is it possible for me to return to the world? He who seeks religious truth, which is the highest treasure of all, must leave behind all that can concern him or draw away his attention, and must be bent upon that one goal alone. He must free his soul from covetousness and lust, and also from the desire for power. Indulge in lust but a little, and lust like a child will grow. Wield worldly power and you will be burdened with cares. Better than sovereignty over the earth, better than living in heaven, better than lordship over all the worlds, is the fruit of holiness. The Bodhisattva has recognized the illusory nature of wealth and will not take poison as food. Will a fish that has been baited still covet the hook, or an escaped bird love the net? Would a rabbit rescued from the serpent's mouth go back to be devoured? Would a man who has burnt his hand with a torch take up the torch after he had dropped it to the earth? Would a blind man who has recovered his sight desire to spoil his eyes again? The sick man suffering from fever seeks for a cooling medicine. Shall we advise him to drink that which will increase the fever? Shall we quench a fire by heaping fuel upon it? I pray thee, pity me not. Rather pity those who are burdened with the cares of royalty and the worry of great riches. They enjoy them in fear and trembling, for they are constantly threatened with the loss of those boons on whose possession their hearts are set, and when they die they cannot take along either their gold or the kingly diadem. My heart hankers after no vulgar profit, so I have put away my royal inheritance and prefer to be free from the burdens of life. Therefore, try not to entangle me in new relationships and duties, nor hinder me from completing the work I have begun. I regret to leave thee, but I will go to the sages who can teach me religion and so find the path on which we can escape evil. May thy country enjoy peace and prosperity, and may wisdom be shed upon thy rule like the brightness of the noonday sun. May thy royal power be strong and may righteousness be the scepter in thine hand. The king, clasping his hands with reverence, bowed down before Sakyamuni and said, Mayest thou obtain that which thou seekest, and when thou hast obtained it, come back, I pray thee, and receive me as thy disciple. The Bodhisattva parted from the king in friendship and goodwill, and purposed in his heart to grant his request. The Bodhisattva's Search. Alara and Uddaka were renowned as teachers among the Brahmins, and there was no one in those days who surpassed them in learning and philosophical knowledge. The Bodhisattva went to them and sat at their feet. He listened to their doctrines of the Atman or Self, which is the ego of the mind and the doer of all doings. He learned their views of the transmigration of souls and of the law of karma, how the souls of bad men had to suffer by being reborn in men of low caste, in animals, or in hell, while those who purified themselves by libation, by sacrifices, and by self-mortification would become kings, or Brahmins, or Devas, so as to rise higher and higher in the grades of existence. He studied their incantations and offerings and the methods by which they attained deliverance of the ego from material existence in states of ecstasy. Alara said, "What is that self which perceives the actions of the 5 roots of mind, touch, smell, taste, sight, and hearing? What is that which is active in the 2 ways of motion, in the hands and in the feet?" The problem of the soul appears in the expressions, "I say, I know and perceive, I come, and I go," or "I will stay here." Thy soul is not thy body. It is not thy eye, not thy ear, not thy nose, not thy tongue, nor is it thy mind. The eye is the one who feels the touch in thy body. The eye is the smeller in the nose, the taster in the tongue, the seer in the eye, the hearer in the ear, and the thinker in the mind. The eye moves thy hands and thy feet. The eye is thy soul. Doubt in the existence of the soul is irreligious, and without discerning this truth there is no way of salvation. Deep speculation will easily involve the mind. It leads to confusion and unbelief, but a purification of the soul leads to the way of escape. True deliverance is reached by removing from the crowd and leading a hermit's life, depending entirely on alms for food. Putting away all desire and clearly recognizing the non-existence of matter, we reach a state of perfect emptiness. Here we find the condition of immaterial life. As the munja grass when freed from its horny case, as a sword when drawn from its scabbard, or as the wild bird escaped from its prison, so the ego liberating itself from all limitations finds perfect release. This is true deliverance, but those only who will have deep faith will learn. The Bodhisattva found no satisfaction in these teachings. He replied, "People are in bondage because they have not yet removed the idea of the ego. The thing and its quality are different in our thought, but not in reality. Heat is different from fire in our thought, but you cannot remove heat from fire in reality. You say that you can remove the qualities and leave the thing, but if you think your theory to the end, you will find that this is not so. Is not man an organism of many aggregates? Are we not composed of various attributes? Man consists of the material form, of sensation, of thought, of dispositions, and, lastly, of understanding. That which men call the ego when they say, 'I am,' is not an entity behind the attributes. It originates by their cooperation. There is mind, there is sensation and thought, and there is truth. And truth is mind when it walks in the path of righteousness. But there is no separate ego soul outside or behind the thought of man. He who believes the ego is a distinct being has no correct conception. The very search for the Atman is wrong. It is a wrong start and it will lead you in a false direction. How much confusion of thought comes from our interest in self, and from our vanity when thinking, "I am so great," or "I have done this wonderful deed." The thought of thine ego stands between thy rational nature and truth. Banish it, and then wilt thou see things as they are. He who thinks correctly will rid himself of ignorance and acquire wisdom. The ideas, I am, and I shall be, or I shall not be, do not occur to a clear thinker. Moreover, if our ego remains, how can we attain true deliverance? If the ego is to be reborn in any of the three worlds, be it in hell, upon earth, or be it even in heaven, we shall meet again and again the same inevitable doom of sorrow. We shall remain chained to the wheel of individuality and shall be implicated in egotism and wrong. All combination is subject to separation, and we cannot escape birth, disease, old age, and death. Is this a final escape? Said Uddaka, consider the unity of things. Things are not their parts, yet they exist. The members and organs of thy body are not thine ego, but thine ego possesses all these parts. What, for instance, is the Ganges? Is the sand the Ganges? Is the water the Ganges? Is the hither bank the Ganges? Is the hither bank the Ganges? Is the farther bank the Ganges? The Ganges is a mighty river and it possesses all these several qualities. Exactly so is our ego. But the Bodhisattva replied, not so, sir. If we remove the water, the sand, the hither bank and the farther bank, where can we find any Ganges? In the same way I observe the activities of man in their harmonious union, but there is no ground for an ego outside its parts. The Brahman sage, however, insisted on the existence of the ego, saying, the ego is the doer of our deeds. How can there be karma without a self as its performer? Do we not see around us the effects of karma? What makes men different in character, station, possessions, and fate? It is their karma, and karma includes merit and demerit. The transmigration of the soul is subject to its karma. We inherit from former existences the evil effects of our evil deeds and the good effects of our good deeds. If that were not so, how could we be different? The Tathagata meditated deeply on the problems of transmigration and karma, and found the truth that lies in them. The doctrine of karma, he said, is undeniable, but the theory of the ego has no foundation. Like everything else in nature, the life of man is subject to the law of cause and effect. The present reaps what the past has sown, and the future is the product of the present. But there is no evidence of the existence of an immutable ego being, of a self which remains the same and migrates from body to body. There is rebirth but no transmigration. Is not this individuality of mine a combination, material as well as mental? Is it not made up of qualities that sprang into being by a gradual evolution? The 5 roots of sense perception in this organism have come from ancestors who performed these functions. The ideas which I think came to me partly from others who thought them, and partly they rise from combinations of the ideas in my own mind. Those who have used the same sense organs and have thought the same ideas before I was composed into this individuality of mine are my previous existences. They are my ancestors as much as the I of yesterday is the father of the I of today, and the karma of my past deeds affects the fate of my present existence. Supposing there were an Atman that performs the actions of the senses, then if the door of sight were torn down and the eye plucked out, That Atman would be able to peep through the larger aperture and see the forms of its surroundings better and more clearly than before. It would be able to hear sounds better if the ears were torn away, smell better if the nose were cut off, taste better if the tongue were pulled out, and feel better if the body were destroyed. I observe the preservation and transmission of character. I perceive the truth of karma, but see no Atman whom your doctrine makes the doer of your deeds. There is rebirth without the transmigration of a self. For this Atman, this self, this ego in the I say and in the I will, is an illusion. If this self were a reality, how could there be an escape from selfhood? The terror of hell would be infinite, and no release could be granted. The evils of existence would not be due to our ignorance and wrongdoing, but would constitute the very nature of our being. Then the Bodhisattva went to the priests officiating in the temples. But the gentle mind of the Sakyamuni was offended at the unnecessary cruelty performed on the altars of the gods. He said, "Ignorance only can make these men prepare festivals and hold vast meetings for sacrifices. Far better to revere the truth than try to appease the gods by shedding blood. What love can a man possess who believes that the destruction of life will atone for evil deeds? Can a new wrong expiate old wrongs? And can the slaughter of an innocent victim blot out the evil deeds of mankind? This is practicing religion by the neglect of moral conduct. Purify your hearts and cease to kill. That is true religion. Rituals have no efficacy. Prayers are vain repetitions, and incantations have no saving power. But to abandon covetousness and lust, to become free from evil passions, and to give up all hatred and ill will, that is the right sacrifice and the true worship. Uruvela, place of mortification. The Bodhisattva went in search of a better system and came to a settlement of 5 bhikkhus in the jungle of Uruvela, and when the Blessed One saw the life of those 5 men, virtuously keeping in check their senses, subduing their passions, and practicing austere self-discipline, he admired their earnestness and joined their company. With holy zeal and a strong heart, the Sakyamuni gave himself up to meditative thought and a rigorous mortification of the body. Whereas the 5 bhikkhus were severe, the Sakyamuni was severer still, and so they revered him, the junior, as their master. So the Bodhisattva continued for 6 years patiently torturing himself and suppressing the wants of nature. He trained his body and exercised his mind in the modes of the most rigorous ascetic life. At last, he ate each day 1 hemp grain only, seeking to cross the ocean of birth and death and to arrive at the shore of deliverance. And when the Bodhisattva was a-hungered, lo, Mara, the evil one, approached him and said, "Thou art emaciated from fasts, and death is near. What good is thy exertion? Deign to live, and thou wilt be able to do good work." But the Sakyamuni made reply, "O thou friend of the indolent, thou wicked one, for what purpose hast thou come? Let the flesh waste away, if but the mind becomes more tranquil and attention more steadfast. What is life in this world? Death in battle is better to me than that I should lie defeated." And Mara withdrew, saying, "For 7 years I have followed the Blessed One step by step, but I have found no fault in the Tathagata. The Bodhisattva was shrunken and attenuated, and his body was like a withered branch. But the fame of his holiness spread in the surrounding countries, and people came from great distances to see him and receive his blessing. However, the Holy One was not satisfied. Seeking true wisdom, he did not find it, and he came to the conclusion that mortification would not extinguish desire nor afford enlightenment in ecstatic contemplation. Seated beneath a jambu tree, he considered the state of his mind and the fruits of his mortification. His body had become weaker, nor had his fasts advanced him in his search for salvation, and therefore when he saw that it was not the right path, he proposed to abandon it. He went to bathe in the Neranjara river, but when he strove to leave the water he could not rise on account of his weakness. Then espying the branch of a tree and taking hold of it, he raised himself and left the stream. But while returning to his abode, he staggered and lay as though dead. There was a chief herdsman living near the grove whose eldest daughter was called Nanda, and Nanda happened to pass by the spot where the Blessed One had swooned, and bowing down before him she offered him rice milk and he accepted the gift. When he had partaken of the rice milk, all his limbs were refreshed, his mind became clear again, and he was strong to receive the highest enlightenment. After this occurrence, the Bodhisattva again took some food. His disciples, having witnessed the scene of Nanda and observing the change in his mode of living, were filled with suspicion. They feared that Siddhartha's religious zeal was flagging and that he whom they had hitherto revered as their master had become oblivious of his high purpose. When the Bodhisattva saw the bhikkhus turning away from him, he felt sorry for their lack of confidence and was aware of the loneliness of his life. Suppressing his grief, he wandered on alone, and his disciples said, "Siddhartha leaves us to seek a more pleasant abode." Mara, the Evil One. The Holy One directed his steps to that blessed Bodhi tree beneath whose shade he was to accomplish his search. As he walked, the earth shook and a brilliant light transfigured the world. When he sat down, the heavens resounded with joy and all living beings were filled with good cheer. Mara alone, Lord of the Five Desires, bringer of death and enemy of truth, was grieved and rejoiced not. With his 3 daughters, Tanha, Raga and Arati, the tempters, and with his host of evil demons, he went to the place where the great Samana sat. But Sakyamuni heeded him not. Mara uttered fear-inspiring threats and raised a whirlwind so that the skies were darkened and the ocean roared and trembled. But the Blessed One under the Bodhi tree remained calm and feared not. The Enlightened One knew that no harm could befall him. The 3 daughters of Mara tempted the Bodhisattva, but he paid no attention to them, and when Mara saw that he could kindle no desire in the heart of the victorious Samana, he ordered all the evil spirits at his command to attack him and overawe the great Muni. But the Blessed One watched them as one would watch the harmless games of children. All the fierce hatred of the evil spirits was of no avail. The flames of hell became wholesome breezes of perfume, and the angry thunderbolts were changed into lotus blossoms. When Mara saw this, he fled away with his army from the Bodhi tree, whilst from above a rain of heavenly flowers fell, and voices of good spirits were heard. Behold the great Muni, his heart unmoved by hatred. The wicked Mara's host against him did not prevail. Pure is he and wise, loving and full of mercy. As the rays of the sun drown the darkness of the world, so he who perseveres in his search will find the truth, and the truth will enlighten him. Enlightenment. The Bodhisattva, having put Mara to flight, gave himself up to meditation. All the miseries of the world, the evils produced by evil deeds and the sufferings arising therefrom, passed before his mental eye, and he thought, surely if living creatures saw the results of all their evil deeds, they would turn away from them in disgust. But selfhood blinds them, and they cling to their obnoxious desires. They crave pleasure for themselves and they cause pain to others. When death destroys their individuality, they find no peace. Their thirst for existence abides and their selfhood reappears in new births. Thus they continue to move in the coil and can find no escape from the hell of their own making. And how empty are their pleasures, how vain are their endeavors. Hollow like the plantain tree and without contents like the bubble. The world is full of evil and sorrow, because it is full of lust. Men go astray because they think that delusion is better than truth. Rather than truth they follow error, which is pleasant to look at in the beginning but in the end causes anxiety, tribulation, and misery. And the Bodhisattva began to expound the Dharma. The Dharma is the truth. The Dharma is the sacred law. The Dharma is religion. The Dharma alone can deliver us from error, from wrong and from sorrow. Pondering on the origin of birth and death, the enlightened one recognized that ignorance was the root of all evil. And these are the links in the development of life, called the 12 Nidanas. In the beginning there is existence blind and without knowledge, and in this sea of ignorance there are stirrings formative and organizing. From stirrings, formative and organizing, rises awareness or feelings. Feelings beget organisms that live as individual beings. These organisms develop the 6 fields, that is, the 5 senses and the mind. The 6 fields come in contact with things. Contact begets sensation. Sensation creates the thirst of individualized being. The thirst of being creates a cleaving to things. The cleaving produces the growth and continuation of selfhood. Selfhood continues in renewed birth. The renewed births of selfhood are the causes of sufferings, old age, sickness, and death. They produce lamentation, anxiety, and despair. The cause of all sorrow lies at the very beginning. It is hidden in the ignorance from which life grows. Remove ignorance and you will destroy the wrong desires that rise from ignorance. Destroy these desires and you will wipe out the wrong perception that rises from them. Destroy wrong perception and there is an end of errors in individualized beings. Destroy the errors in individualized beings and the illusions of the 6 fields will disappear. Destroy illusions and the contact with things will cease to beget misconception. Destroy misconception and you do away with thirst. Destroy thirst and you will be free of all morbid cleaving. Remove the cleaving and you destroy the selfishness of selfhood. If the selfishness of selfhood is destroyed, you will be above birth, old age, disease, and death, and you will escape all suffering. The enlightened one saw the 4 noble truths which point out the path that leads to nirvana or the extinction of self. The first noble truth is the existence of sorrow. The second noble truth is the cause of suffering. The third noble truth is the cessation of sorrow. The fourth noble truth is the eightfold path that leads to the cessation of sorrow. This is the Dharma. This is the truth. This is religion. And the Enlightened One uttered this stanza: "Through many births I sought in vain the builder of this house of pain. Now, builder, you are plain to see, and from this house at last I'm free. I burst the rafters, roof and wall, and dwell in the peace beyond them all. There is self and there is truth. Where self is, truth is not. Where truth is, self is not. Self is the fleeting error of samsara. It is individual separateness and that egotism which begets envy and hatred. Self is the yearning for pleasure and the lust after vanity. Truth is the correct comprehension of things. It is the permanent and everlasting, the real in all existence, the bliss of righteousness. The existence of self is an illusion, and here is no wrong in this world, no vice, no evil, except what flows from the assertion of self. The attainment of truth is possible only when self is recognized as an illusion. Righteousness can be practiced only when we have freed our mind from passions of egotism. Perfect peace can dwell only where all vanity has disappeared. Blessed is he who has understood the Dharma. Blessed is he who does no harm to his fellow beings. Blessed is he who overcomes wrong and is free from passion. To the highest bliss has he attained who has conquered all selfishness and vanity. He has become the Buddha, the Perfect One. The first converts. The Blessed One tarried in solitude 7 times 7 days, enjoying the bliss of emancipation. At that time Tapussa and Balika, 2 merchants, came traveling on the road nearby, and when they saw the great Samana, majestic and full of peace, they approached him respectfully and offered him rice cakes and honey. This was the first food that the Enlightened One ate after he attained Buddhahood. And the Buddha addressed them and pointed out to them the way of salvation. The 2 merchants, seeing the holiness of the conqueror of Mara, bowed down in reverence and said, "We take our refuge, Lord, in the Blessed One and in the Dharma." Tapussa and Balika were the first that became followers of the Buddha, and they were lay disciples. The Brahma's request. The Blessed One, having attained Buddhahood while resting under the shepherd's Nigroda tree on the banks of the river Neranjara, pronounced this solemn utterance: "How sure his pathway in this wood, who follows truth's unchanging call. How blessed, to be kind and good, and practice self-restraint in all. How light, from passion to be free, and sensual joys to let go by. And yet his greatest bliss will be, when he has quelled the pride of I. I have recognized the deepest truth, which is sublime and peace-giving, but difficult to understand, for most men move in a sphere of worldly interests and find their delight in worldly desires. The worldling will not understand the doctrine, for to him there is happiness in selfhood only, and the bliss that lies in a complete surrender to truth is unintelligible to him. He will call resignation what to the enlightened mind is the purest joy. He will see annihilation where the perfected one finds immortality. He will regard as death what the conqueror of self knows to be life everlasting. The truth remains hidden from him who is in the bondage of hate and desire. Nirvana remains incomprehensible and mysterious to the vulgar whose minds are beclouded with worldly interests. Should I preach the doctrine and mankind not comprehend it, it would bring me only fatigue and trouble. Mara, the evil one, on hearing the words of the blessed Buddha, approached and said, "Be greeted, thou Holy One. Thou hast attained the highest bliss, and it is time for thee to enter into the final nirvana." Then Brahma Sahampati descended from the heavens and, having worshipped the Blessed One, said, "Alas! The world must perish, should the Holy One, the Tathagata, decide not to teach the Dharma. Be merciful to those that struggle. Have compassion upon the sufferers. Pity the creatures who are hopelessly entangled in the snares of sorrow. There are some beings that are almost free from the dust of worldliness. If they hear not the doctrine preached, they will be lost. But if they hear it, they will believe and be saved." The Blessed One, full of compassion, looked with the eye of a Buddha upon all sentient creatures, and he saw among them beings whose minds were but scarcely covered by the dust of worldliness, who were of good disposition and easy to instruct. He saw some who were conscious of the dangers of lust and wrongdoing. And the Blessed One said to Brahma Sahampati, "Wide open be the door of immortality to all who have ears to hear. May they receive the Dharma with faith." Then the Blessed One turned to Mara, saying, "I shall not pass into the final nirvana, O evil one, until there be not only brethren and sisters of an order, but also lay disciples of both sexes, who shall have become true hearers, wise, well-trained, ready and learned, versed in the scriptures, fulfilling all the greater and lesser duties, correct in life, walking according to the precepts until they, having thus themselves learned the doctrine, shall be able to give information to others concerning it, preach it, make it known, establish it, open it, minutely explain it, and make it clear until they, when others start vain doctrines, shall be able to vanquish and refute them, and so to spread the wonder-working truth abroad. I shall not die until the pure religion of truth shall have become successful, prosperous, widespread, and popular in all its full extent until, in a word, it shall have been well proclaimed among men." Then Brahma Sahampati understood that the Blessed One had granted his request and would preach the doctrine. Founding the Kingdom. Upaka sees the Buddha. Now the Blessed One thought, "To whom shall I preach the doctrine first? My old teachers are dead. They would have received the good news with joy. But my 5 disciples are still alive. I shall go to them, and to them shall I first proclaim the gospel of deliverance." At that time the 5 bhikkhus dwelt in the deer park at Benares, and the Blessed One rose and journeyed to their abode, not thinking of their unkindness in having left him at a time when he was most in need of their sympathy and help, but mindful only of the services which they had ministered unto him, and pitying them for the austerities which they practiced in vain. Upaka, a young Brahmin and a Jain, a former acquaintance of Siddhartha, saw the Blessed One while he journeyed to Benares, and, amazed at the majesty and sublime joyfulness of his appearance, said to him, "Thy countenance, my friend, is serene. Thine eyes are bright and indicate purity and blessedness. The Holy Buddha replied, I have obtained deliverance by the extinction of self. My body is chastened, my mind is free from desire, and the deepest truth has taken abode in my heart. I have obtained nirvana, and this is the reason that my countenance is serene and my eyes are bright. I now desire to found the kingdom of truth upon earth, to give light to those who are enshrouded in darkness and to open the gate of deathlessness. Upaka replied, Thou professest then, friend, to be Jina, the conqueror of the world, the Absolute One and the Holy One. The Blessed One said, Jinas are all those who have conquered self and the passions of self. Those alone are victorious who control their minds and abstain from evil. Therefore, Upaka, I am the Jina. Upaka shook his head. Venerable Gautama, he said, Thy way lies yonder, and taking another road he went away. The Sermon at Benares. On seeing their old teacher approach, the 5 bhikkhus agreed among themselves not to salute him, nor to address him as a master, but by his name only. For, so they said, he has broken his vow and has abandoned holiness. He is no bhikkhu, but Gautama, and Gautama has become a man who lives in abundance and indulges in the pleasures of worldliness. But when the Blessed One approached in a dignified manner, they involuntarily rose from their seats and greeted him in spite of their resolution. Still they called him by his name and addressed him as Friend Gautama. When they had thus received the Blessed One, he said, Do not call the Tathagata by his name nor address him as friend, for he is the Buddha, the Holy One. The Buddha looks with a kind heart equally on all living beings, and they therefore call him Father. To disrespect a father is wrong. To despise him is wicked. The Tathagata, the Buddha continued, does not seek salvation in austerities, but neither does he for that reason indulge in worldly pleasures, nor live in abundance. The Tathagata has found the middle path. There are 2 extremes, O bhikkhus, which the man who has given up the world ought not to follow the habitual practice, on the one hand, of self-indulgence, which is unworthy, vain and fit only for the worldly minded, and the habitual practice, on the other hand, of self-mortification, which is painful, useless and unprofitable. Neither abstinence from fish and flesh, nor going naked, nor shaving the head, nor wearing matted hair, nor dressing in a rough garment, nor covering oneself with dirt, nor sacrificing to Agni, will cleanse a man who is not free from delusions. Reading the Vedas, making offerings to priests, or sacrifices to the gods, self-mortification by heat or cold, and many such penances performed for the sake of immortality, these do not cleanse the man who is not free from delusions. Anger, drunkenness, obstinacy, bigotry, deception, envy, self-praise, disparaging others, superciliousness and evil intentions constitute uncleanness, not verily the eating of flesh. A middle path, O bhikkhus, avoiding the 2 extremes, has been discovered by the Tathagata, a path which opens the eyes and bestows understanding, which leads to peace of mind, to the higher wisdom, to full enlightenment, to nirvana. What is that middle path, O bhikkhus? Avoiding these 2 extremes, discovered by the Tathagata, that path which opens the eyes and bestows understanding, which leads to peace of mind, to the higher wisdom, to full enlightenment, to nirvana. Let me teach you, O bhikkhus, the middle path, which keeps aloof from both extremes. By suffering, the emaciated devotee produces confusion and sickly thoughts in his mind. Mortification is not conducive even to worldly knowledge, how much less to a triumph over the senses. He who fills his lamp with water will not dispel the darkness, and he who tries to light a fire with rotten wood will fail. And how can anyone be free from self by leading a wretched life, if he does not succeed in quenching the fires of lust, if he still hankers after either worldly or heavenly pleasures? But he in whom self has become extinct is free from lust. He will desire neither worldly nor heavenly pleasures, and the satisfaction of his natural wants will not defile him. However, let him be moderate, let him eat and drink according to the need of the body. Sensuality is enervating. The self-indulgent man is a slave to his passions, and pleasure-seeking is degrading and vulgar. But to satisfy the necessities of life is not evil. To keep the body in good health is a duty, for otherwise we shall not be able to trim the lamp of wisdom and keep our minds strong and clear. Water surrounds the lotus flower, but does not wet its petals. This is the middle path, O bhikkhus, that keeps aloof from both extremes. And the Blessed One spoke kindly to his disciples, pitying them for their errors, and pointing out the uselessness of their endeavors, and the ice of ill will that chilled their hearts melted away under the gentle warmth of the Master's persuasion. Now the Blessed One set the wheel of the most excellent law rolling, and he began to preach to the 5 bhikkhus, opening to them the gate of immortality, and showing them the bliss of nirvana. The Buddha said, "The spokes of the wheel are the rules of pure conduct. Justice is the uniformity of their length. Wisdom is the tire. Modesty and thoughtfulness are the hub in which the immovable axle of truth is fixed. He who recognizes the existence of suffering, its cause, its remedy, and its cessation has fathomed the 4 noble truths. He will walk in the right path. Right views will be the torch to light his way. Right aspirations will be his guide. Right speech will be his dwelling place on the road. His gait will be straight, for it is right behavior. His refreshments will be the right way of earning his livelihood. Right efforts will be his steps. Right thoughts his breath. And right contemplation will give him the peace that follows in his footprints. Now, this, O bhikkhus, is the noble truth concerning suffering. Birth is attended with pain, decay is painful, disease is painful, death is painful. Union with the unpleasant is painful. Painful is separation from the pleasant, and any craving that is unsatisfied, that too is painful. In brief, bodily conditions which spring from attachment are painful. This, then, O bhikkhus, is the noble truth concerning suffering. Now this, O bhikkhus, is the noble truth concerning the origin of suffering. Verily, it is that craving which causes the renewal of existence, accompanied by sensual delight, seeking satisfaction now here, now there, the craving for the gratification of the passions, the craving for a future life, and the craving for happiness in this life. This, then, O bhikkhus, is the noble truth concerning the origin of suffering. Now this, O bhikkhus, is the noble truth concerning the destruction of suffering. Verily, it is the destruction, in which no passion remains, of this very thirst. It is the laying aside of, the being free from, the dwelling no longer upon this thirst. This, then, O bhikkhus, is the noble truth concerning the destruction of suffering. Now, this, O bhikkhus, is the noble truth concerning the way which leads to the destruction of sorrow. Verily, it is this noble eightfold path, that is to say, right views, right aspirations, right speech, right behavior, right livelihood, right effort, right thoughts, and right contemplation. This, then, O bhikkhus, is the noble truth concerning the destruction of sorrow. By the practice of loving kindness I have attained liberation of heart, and thus I am assured that I shall never return in renewed births. I have even now attained nirvana. When the Blessed One had thus set the royal chariot wheel of truth rolling onward, a rapture thrilled through all the universes. The Devas left their heavenly abodes to listen to the sweetness of the truth. The saints that had parted from life crowded around the great teacher to receive the glad tidings. Even the animals of the earth felt the bliss that rested upon the words of the Tathagata, and all the creatures of the host of sentient beings, gods, men, and beasts, hearing the message of deliverance, received and understood it in their own language. And when the doctrine was propounded, the Venerable Kondana, the oldest one among the 5 bhikkhus, discerned the truth with his mental eye, and he said, "Truly, O Buddha, our Lord, thou hast found the truth." Then the other bhikkhus too joined him and exclaimed, "Truly, thou art the Buddha, thou hast found the truth." And the Devas and saints and all the good spirits of the departed generations that had listened to the sermon of the Tathagata joyfully received the doctrine and shouted, "Truly, the Blessed One has founded the kingdom of righteousness. The Blessed One has moved the earth. He has set the wheel of truth rolling, which by no one in the universe, be he God or man, can ever be turned back. The kingdom of truth will be preached upon earth. It will spread, and righteousness, goodwill, and peace will reign among mankind." The Sangha. Having pointed out to the 5 bhikkhus the truth, the Buddha said, "A man that stands alone, having decided to obey the truth, may be weak and slip back into his old ways. Therefore, stand ye together, assist one another, and strengthen one another efforts. Be like unto brothers, one in love, one in holiness, and one in your zeal for the truth. Spread the truth and preach the doctrine in all quarters of the world, so that in the end all living creatures will be citizens of the kingdom of righteousness. This is the Holy Brotherhood. This is the Church, the congregation of the saints of the Buddha. This is the Sangha that establishes a communion among all those who have taken their refuge in the Buddha." Kondana was the first disciple of the Buddha who had thoroughly grasped the doctrine of the Holy One, and the Tathagata, looking into his heart, said, "Truly, Kondana has understood the truth." Therefore the Venerable Kondana received the name Anatta Kondana, that is, Kondana who has understood the doctrine. Then the Venerable Kondana spoke to the Buddha and said, "Lord, Let us receive the ordination from the Blessed One." And the Buddha said, "Come, O bhikkhus. Well taught is the doctrine. Lead a holy life for the extinction of suffering." Then Kondana and the other bhikkhus uttered 3 times these solemn vows. "To the Buddha will I look in faith. He, the Perfect One, is holy and supreme." The Buddha conveys to us instruction, wisdom, and salvation. He is the Blessed One, who knows the law of being. He is the Lord of the world, who yoketh men like oxen, the teacher of gods and men, the exalted Buddha. Therefore, to the Buddha will I look in faith. To the doctrine will I look in faith. Well preached is the doctrine by the Exalted One. The doctrine has been revealed so as to become visible. The doctrine is above time and space. The doctrine is not based upon hearsay, it means, come and see the doctrine to welfare. The doctrine is recognized by the wise in their own hearts. Therefore to the doctrine will I look in faith. To the community will I look in faith. The community of the Buddha's disciples instructs us how to lead a life of righteousness. The community of the Buddha's disciples teaches us how to exercise honesty and justice. The community of the Buddha's disciples shows us how to practice the truth. They form a brotherhood in kindness and charity, and their saints are worthy of reverence. The community of the Buddha's disciples is founded as a holy brotherhood in which men bind themselves together to teach the behests of rectitude and to do good. Therefore, to the community will I look in faith. The gospel of the Blessed One increased from day to day, and many people came to hear him and to accept the ordination to lead thenceforth a holy life for the sake of the extinction of suffering. And the Blessed One, seeing that it was impossible to attend to all who wanted to hear the truth and receive the ordination, sent out from the number of his disciples such as were to preach the Dharma, and said unto them, "The Dharma and the Vinaya proclaimed by the Tathagata shine forth when they are displayed, and not when they are concealed. But let not this doctrine, so full of truth and so excellent, fall into the hands of those unworthy of it, where it would be despised and contemned, treated shamefully, ridiculed and censured. I now grant you, O bhikkhus, this permission. Confer henceforth in the different countries the ordination upon those who are eager to receive it, when you find them worthy. Go ye now, O bhikkhus, for the benefit of the many, for the welfare of mankind, out of compassion for the world. Preach the doctrine which is glorious in the beginning, glorious in the middle, and glorious in the end, in the spirit as well as in the letter. There are beings whose eyes are scarcely covered with dust, but if the doctrine is not preached to them they cannot attain salvation. Proclaim to them a life of holiness. They will understand the doctrine and accept it." And it became an established custom that the bhikkhus went out preaching while the weather was good. But in the rainy season they came together again and joined their master, to listen to the exhortations of the Tathagata. Yasa, the youth of Benares. At that time there was in Benares a noble youth, Yasa by name, the son of a wealthy merchant. Troubled in his mind about the sorrows of the world, he secretly rose up in the night and stole away to the Blessed One. The Blessed One saw Yasa coming from afar. Yasa approached and exclaimed, "Alas, what distress! What tribulations!" The Blessed One said to Yasa, "Here is no distress. here are no tribulations. Come to me and I will teach you the truth, and the truth will dispel your sorrows. When Yasser, the noble youth, heard that there were neither distress, nor tribulations, nor sorrows, his heart was comforted. He went into the place where the Blessed One was, and sat down near him. Then the Blessed One preached about charity and morality. He explained the vanity of the thought, I am, the dangers of desire, and the necessity of avoiding the evils of life in order to walk on the path of deliverance. Instead of disgust with the world, Yasser felt the cooling stream of holy wisdom, and, having obtained the pure and spotless eye of truth, he looked at his person, richly adorned with pearls and precious stones, and his heart was shamed. The Tathagata, knowing his inward thoughts, said, Though a person be ornamented with jewels, the heart may have conquered the senses. The outward form does not constitute religion or affect the mind. Thus the body of a samana may wear an ascetic's garb while his mind is immersed in worldliness. A man that dwells in lonely woods and yet covets worldly vanities is a worldling, while the man in worldly garments may let his heart soar high to heavenly thoughts. There is no distinction between the layman and the hermit, if but both have banished the thought of self. Seeing that Yasser was ready to enter upon the path, the Blessed One said to him, Follow me. And Yasser joined the brotherhood, and having put on a bhikkhu's robe, received the ordination. While the Blessed One and Yasser were discussing the doctrine, Yasser's father passed by in search of his son, and in passing he asked the Blessed One, Pray, Lord, hast thou seen Yasser, my son? The Buddha said to Yasser's father, Come in, sir, thou wilt find thy son, and Yasser's father became full of joy and he entered. He sat down near his son, but his eyes were holden and he knew him not, and the Lord began to preach. And Yasser's father, understanding the doctrine of the Blessed One, said, Glorious is the truth, O Lord. The Buddha, the Holy One, our Master, sets up what has been overturned. He reveals what has been hidden. He points out the way to the wanderer who has gone astray. He lights a lamp in the darkness so that all who have eyes to see can discern the things that surround them. I take refuge in the Buddha, our Lord. I take refuge in the doctrine revealed by him. I take refuge in the brotherhood which he has founded. May the Blessed One receive me from this day forth while my life lasts as a lay disciple who has taken refuge in him. Yasser's father was the first lay member who became the first lay disciple of the Buddha by pronouncing the threefold formula of refuge. When the wealthy merchant had taken refuge in the Buddha, his eyes were opened and he saw his son sitting at his side in a bhikkhu's robe. My son, Yasser, he said, thy mother is absorbed in lamentation and grief. Return home and restore thy mother to life. Then Yasser looked at the Blessed One, who said, should Yasser return to the world and enjoy the pleasures of a worldly life as he did before? Yasser's father replied, if Yasser, my son, finds it again to stay with thee, let him stay. He has become delivered from the bondage of worldliness. When the Blessed One had cheered their hearts with words of truth and righteousness, Yasser's father said, may the Blessed One, O Lord, consent to take his meal with me together with Yasser as his attendant. The Blessed One, having donned his robes, took his alms bowl and went with Yasser to the house of the rich merchant. When they had arrived there, the mother and also the former wife of Yasser saluted the Blessed One and sat down near him. Then the Blessed One preached, and the women, having understood his doctrine, exclaimed, "Glorious is the truth, O Lord! We take refuge in the Buddha, our Lord. We take refuge in the doctrine revealed by him. We take refuge in the brotherhood which has been founded by him. May the Blessed One receive us from this day forth while our life lasts as lay disciples who have taken refuge in him." The mother and the wife of Yasser, the noble youth of Benares, were the first women who became lay disciples and took their refuge in the Buddha. Now there were 4 friends of Yasser belonging to the wealthy families of Benares. Their names were Vimala, Subahu, Panaji, and Gavampati. When Yasser's friends heard that Yasser had cut off his hair and put on bhikkhu robes to give up the world and go forth into homelessness, they thought, "Surely that cannot be a common doctrine. That must be a noble renunciation of the world." And they went to Yasser, and Yasser addressed the Blessed One saying, "May the Blessed One administer exhortation and instruction to these 4 friends of mine." And the Blessed One preached to them, and Yasser's friends accepted the doctrine and took refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Kassapa, the fire worshipper. At that time there lived in Uruvela the Jatilas, Brahmin hermits with matted hair, worshipping the fire and keeping a fire dragon, and Kassapa was their chief. Kassapa was renowned throughout all India, and his name was honored as one of the wisest men on earth and an authority on religion. And the Blessed One went to Kassapa of Uruvela the Jatila, and said, "Let me stay a night in the room where you keep your sacred fire." Kassapa, seeing the Blessed One in his majesty and beauty, thought to himself, "This is a great Muni and a noble teacher. Should he stay overnight in the room where the sacred fire is kept, the serpent will bite him and he will die." And he said, "I do not object to your staying overnight in the room where the sacred fire is kept, but the serpent lives there. He will kill you and I should be sorry to see you perish." But the Buddha insisted, and Kassapa admitted him to the room where the sacred fire was kept. And the Blessed One sat down with body erect, surrounding himself with watchfulness. In the night the dragon came, belching forth in rage his fiery poison, and filling the air with burning vapor, but could do him no harm, and the fire consumed itself while the world-honored one remained composed. And the venomous fiend became very wroth so that he died in his anger. When Kassapa saw the light shining forth from the room, he said, "Alas, what misery! Truly, the countenance of Gautama the great Sakyamuni is beautiful, but the serpent will destroy him." In the morning the Blessed One showed the dead body of the fiend to Kassapa, saying, "His fire has been conquered by my fire." And Kassapa thought to himself, "Sakyamuni is a great Samana and possesses high powers, but he is not holy like me." There was in those days a festival, and Kassapa thought, "The people will come hither from all parts of the country and will see the great Sakyamuni. When he speaks to them, they will believe in him and abandon me." And he grew envious. When the day of the festival arrived, the Blessed One retired and did not come to Kassapa. And Kassapa went to the Buddha on the next morning and said, "Why did the great Sakyamuni not come?" The Tathagata replied, "Didst thou not think, O Kassapa, that it would be better if I stayed away from the festival?" And Kassapa was astonished and thought, "Great is Sakyamuni. He can read my most secret thoughts, but he is not holy like me." The Blessed One addressed Kassapa and said, "Thou sayest the truth, but acceptest it not because of the envy that dwells in thy heart. Is envy holiness? Envy is the last remnant of self that has remained in thy mind. Thou art not holy, Kassapa, thou hast not yet entered the path." And Kassapa gave up his resistance. His envy disappeared, and, bowing down before the Blessed One, he said, "Lord, our Master, let me receive the ordination from the Blessed One." And the Blessed One said, "Thou, Kassapa, art chief of the Jatilas. Go, then, first and inform them of thine intention, and let them do as thou thinkest fit." Then Kassapa went to the Jatilas and said, "I am anxious to lead a religious life under the direction of the great Sakyamuni, who is the enlightened one, the Buddha. Do as ye think best." The Jatilas replied, "We have conceived a profound affection for the great Sakyamuni, and if thou wilt join his brotherhood, we will do likewise." The Jatilas of Uruvela now flung their paraphernalia of fire worship into the river and went to the Blessed One. Nadi Kassapa and Gaya Kassapa, brothers of the great Uruvela Kassapa, powerful men and chieftains among the people, were dwelling below on the stream, and when they saw the instruments used in fire worship floating in the river, they said, "Something has happened to our brother." And they came with their folk to Uruvela. Hearing what had happened, they, too, went to the Buddha. The Blessed One, seeing that the Jatilas of Nadi and Gaya, who had practiced severe austerities and worshipped fire, were now come to him, preached a sermon on fire, and said, "Everything, O Jatilas, is burning. The eye is burning, all the senses are burning, thoughts are burning. They are burning with the fire of lust. There is anger, there is ignorance, there is hatred, and as long as the fire finds inflammable things upon which it can feed, so long will it burn, and there will be birth and death, decay, grief, lamentation, suffering, despair, and sorrow." Considering this, a disciple of the Dharma will see the Four Noble Truths and walk in the Eightfold Path of holiness. He will become wary of his eye, wary of all his senses, wary of his thoughts. He will divest himself of passion and become free. He will be delivered from selfishness and attain the blessed state of nirvana. And the Jatilas rejoiced and took refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Sermon at Rajagaha. The Blessed One, having dwelt some time in Uruvela, went to Rajagaha, accompanied by a number of bhikkhus, many of whom had been Jatilas before. The great Kassapa, chief of the Jatilas and formerly a fire worshipper, went with him. When the Magadha king, Senya Bimbasara, heard of the arrival of Gautama Sakyamuni, of whom the people said, "He is the Holy One, the Blessed Buddha, guiding men as a driver curbs bullocks, the teacher of high and low," he went out surrounded with his counselors and generals and came to the grove where the Blessed One was. There they saw the Blessed One in the company of Kassapa, the great religious teacher of the Jatilas, and they were astonished and thought, has the great Sakyamuni placed himself under the spiritual direction of Kassapa, or has Kassapa become a disciple of Gautama? The Tathagata, reading the thoughts of the people, said to Kassapa, "What knowledge hast thou gained, O Kassapa, and what has induced thee to renounce the sacred fire and give up thine austere penances?" Kassapa said, "The profit I derived from adoring the fire was continuance in the wheel of individuality with all its sorrows and vanities. This service I have cast away, and instead of continuing penances and sacrifices I have gone in quest of the highest nirvana. Since I have seen the light of truth, I have abandoned worshipping the fire." The Buddha, perceiving that the whole assembly was ready as a vessel to receive the doctrine, spoke thus to Bimbasara the king. "He who knows the nature of self and understands how the senses act, finds no room for selfishness, and thus he will attain peace unending. The world holds the thought of self, and from this arises false apprehension. Some say that the self endures after death, some say it perishes. Both are wrong, and their error is most grievous. For if they say the self is perishable, the fruit they strive for will perish too, and at some time there will be no hereafter. Good and evil would be indifferent. This salvation from selfishness is without merit. When some, on the other hand, say the self will not perish, then in the midst of all life and death there is but one identity unborn and undying. If such is their self, then it is perfect and cannot be perfected by deeds. The lasting, imperishable self could never be changed. Self would be lord and master, and there would be no use in perfecting the perfect. Moral aims and salvation would be unnecessary. But now we see the marks of joy and sorrow. Where is any constancy? If there is no permanent self that does our deeds, then there is no self. There is no actor behind our actions, no perceiver behind our perception, no lord behind our deeds. Now attend and listen. The senses meet the object, and from their contact sensation is born. Thence results recollection. Thus, as the sun's power through a burning glass causes fire to appear, so through the cognizance born of sense and object, the mind originates, and with it the ego, the thought of self, whom some Brahman teachers call the Lord. The shoot springs from the seed. The seed is not the shoot. Both are not one and the same, but successive phases in a continuous growth. Such is the birth of animated life. Ye that are slaves of the self and toil in its service from morn until night, ye that live in constant fear of birth, old age, sickness, and death, receive the good tidings that your cruel master exists not. Self is an error, an illusion, a dream. Open your eyes and awaken. See things as they are, and ye will be comforted. He who is awake will no longer be afraid of nightmares. He who has recognized the nature of the rope that seemed to be a serpent will cease to tremble. He who has found there is no self will let go all the lusts and desires of egotism. The cleaving to things, covetousness, and sensuality inherited from former existences are the causes of the misery and vanity in the world. Surrender the grasping disposition of selfishness, and you will attain to that calm state of mind which conveys perfect peace, goodness, and wisdom. And the Buddha breathed forth this solemn utterance. Do not deceive, do not despise each other, anywhere. Do not be angry, and do not secret resentment bear. For as a mother risks her life and watches over her child, so boundless be your love to all, so tender, kind and mild. Yea, cherish good will right and left, for all, both soon and late, and with no hindrance, with no stint, from envy free and hate. While standing, walking, sitting down, forever keep in mind, the rule of life that's always best is to be loving kind. Gifts are great, the founding of viharas is meritorious, meditations and religious exercises pacify the heart, comprehension of the truth leads to nirvana, but greater than all is loving kindness. As the light of the moon is 16 times stronger than the light of all the stars, so loving kindness is 16 times more efficacious in liberating the heart than all other religious accomplishments taken together. This state of heart is the best in the world. Let a man remain steadfast in it while he is awake, whether he is standing, walking, sitting, or lying down. When the Enlightened One had finished his sermon, the Magadha king said to the Blessed One, "In former days, Lord, when I was a prince, I cherished 5 wishes. I wished, oh, that I might be inaugurated as a king. This was my first wish, and it has been fulfilled. Further, I wished, might the Holy Buddha, the Perfect One, appear on earth while I rule, and might he come to my kingdom. This was my second wish, and it is fulfilled now. Further, I wished, might I pay my respects to him. This was my third wish, and it is fulfilled now. The fourth wish was, might the Blessed One preach the doctrine to me, and this is fulfilled now. The greatest wish, however, was the fifth wish. Might I understand the doctrine of the Blessed One. And this wish is fulfilled too. Glorious Lord, most glorious is the truth preached by the Tathagata. Our Lord, the Buddha, sets up what has been overturned. He reveals what has been hidden. He points out the way to the wanderer who has gone astray. He lights a lamp in the darkness so that those who have eyes to see may see. I take my refuge in the Buddha. I take my refuge in the Dharma. I take my refuge in the Sangha. The Tathagata, by the exercise of his virtue and by wisdom, showed his unlimited spiritual power. He subdued and harmonized all minds. He made them see and accept the truth, and throughout the kingdom the seeds of virtue were sown. The King's Gift. Senya Bimbisara, the king, having taken his refuge in the Buddha, invited the Tathagata to his palace, saying, "Will the Blessed One consent to take his meal with me tomorrow together with the fraternity of bhikkhus?" The next morning the king announced to the Blessed One that it was time for taking food. "Thou art my most welcome guest, O Lord of the world, come. The meal is prepared." The Blessed One, having donned his robes, took his alms bowl and, together with a great number of bhikkhus, entered the city of Rajagaha. Sakka, the king of the Devas, assuming the appearance of a young Brahmin, walked in front, and said, "He who teaches self-control with those who have learned self-control, the Redeemer with those whom he has redeemed, the Blessed One with those to whom he has given peace, is entering Rajagaha. Hail to the Buddha, our Lord. Honor to his name and blessings to all who take refuge in him." Sakka intoned this stanza, Blessed is the place in which the Buddha walks, and blessed the ears which hear his talks. Blessed his disciples, for they are the tellers of his truth both near and far. If all could hear this truth so good, then all men's minds would eat rich food, and strong would grow men's brotherhood. When the Blessed One had finished his meal, and had cleansed his bowl and his hands, the king sat down near him and thought, "Where may I find a place for the Blessed One to live in, not too far from the town and not too near, suitable for going and coming, easily accessible to all people who want to see him, a place that is by day not too crowded and by night not exposed to noise, wholesome and well fitted for a retired life? There is my pleasure garden, the bamboo grove Vilavana, fulfilling all these conditions. I shall offer it to the brotherhood whose head is the Buddha." The king dedicated his garden to the brotherhood, saying, "May the Blessed One accept my gift." Then the Blessed One, having silently shown his consent and having gladdened and edified the Magadha king by religious discourse, rose from his seat and went away. Sariputta and Moggallana. At that time Sariputta and Moggallana, two Brahmins and chiefs of the followers of Sanjaya, led a religious life. They had promised each other, "He who first attains nirvana shall tell the other one." Sariputta, seeing the venerable Assaji begging for alms, modestly keeping his eyes to the ground and dignified in deportment, exclaimed, "Truly this Samana has entered the right path. I will ask him in whose name he has retired from the world and what doctrine he professes." Being addressed by Sariputta, Assaji replied, "I am a follower of the Buddha, the Blessed One, but being a novice I can tell you the substance only of the doctrine." Said Sariputta, "Tell me, venerable monk, it is the substance I want." And Assaji recited the stanza, "Nothing we seek to touch or see can represent eternity. They spoil and die. Then let us find eternal truth within the mind." Having heard this stanza, Sariputta obtained the pure and spotless eye of truth and said, "Now I see clearly, whatsoever is subject to origination is also subject to cessation. If this be the doctrine, I have reached the state to enter nirvana which heretofore has remained hidden from me." Sariputta went to Moggallana and told him, and both said, "We will go to the Blessed One, that he, the Blessed One, may be our teacher." When the Buddha saw Sariputta and Moggallana coming from afar, he said to his disciples, "These two monks are highly auspicious." When the two friends had taken refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha, the Holy One said to his other disciples, "Sariputta, like the firstborn son of a world-ruling monarch, is well able to assist the king as his chief follower to set the wheel of the law rolling." Now the people were annoyed. Seeing that many distinguished young men of the kingdom of Magadha led a religious life under the direction of the Blessed One, they became angry and murmured, "Gautama Sakyamuni induces fathers to leave their wives and causes families to become extinct." When they saw the bhikkhus, they reviled them, saying, "The great Sakyamuni has come to Rajagaha, subduing the minds of men. Who will be the next to be led astray by him?" The bhikkhus told it to the Blessed One, and the Blessed One said, "This murmuring, O bhikkhus, will not last long. It will last 7 days. If they revile you, answer them with these words, It is by preaching the truth that Tathagatas lead men. Who will murmur at the wise? Who will blame the virtuous? Who will condemn self-control, righteousness, and kindness? And the Blessed One proclaimed, "Commit no wrong, do only good, and let your heart be pure." This is the doctrine Buddhas teach, and this doctrine will endure. Anathapindika, the man of wealth. At this time there was Anathapindika, a man of unmeasured wealth, visiting Rajagaha. Being of a charitable disposition, he was called the supporter of orphans and the friend of the poor. Hearing that the Buddha had come into the world and was stopping in the bamboo grove near the city, he set out on that very night to meet the Blessed One. And the Blessed One saw at once the sterling quality of Anathapindika's heart and greeted him with words of religious comfort. And they sat down together, and Anathapindika listened to the sweetness of the truth preached by the Blessed One. And the Buddha said, "The restless, busy nature of the world, this, I declare, is at the root of pain. Attain that composure of mind which is resting in the peace of immortality. Self is but a heap of composite qualities, and its world is empty like a fantasy. Who is it that shapes our lives? Is it Isvara, a personal creator? If Isvara be the maker, all living things should have silently to submit to their maker's power. They would be like vessels formed by the potter's hand. And if it were so, how would it be possible to practice virtue? If the world had been made by Isvara, there should be no such thing as sorrow, or calamity, or evil, for both pure and impure deeds must come from him. If not, there would be another cause beside him, and he would not be self-existent. Thus, thou sayest, the thought of Isvara is overthrown. Again, it is said that the Absolute has created us, but that which is absolute cannot be a cause. All things around us come from a cause as the plant comes from the seed, but how can the Absolute be the cause of all things alike? If it pervades them, then, certainly, it does not make them. Again, it is said that self is the maker, but if self is the maker, why did it not make things pleasing? The causes of sorrow and joy are real and touchable. How can they have been made by self? Again, if we adopt the argument that there is no maker, our fate is such as it is, and there is no causation, what use would there be in shaping our lives and adjusting means to an end? Therefore, we argue that all things that exist are not without cause. However, neither Isvara, nor the Absolute, nor the self nor causeless chance, is the maker, but our deeds produce results both good and evil according to the law of causation. Let us, then, abandon the heresy of worshipping Isvara and of praying to him. Let us no longer lose ourselves in vain speculations or profitless subtleties. Let us surrender self and all selfishness, and as all things are fixed by causation, let us practice good so that good may result from our actions. And Anathapindika said, I see that thou art the Buddha, the Blessed One, the Tathagata, and I wish to open to thee my whole mind. Having listened to my words, advise me what I shall do. My life is full of work, and having acquired great wealth, I am surrounded with cares. Yet I enjoy my work, and apply myself to it with all diligence. Many people are in my employ and depend upon the success of my enterprises. Now, I have heard thy disciples praise the bliss of the hermit and denounce the unrest of the world. The Holy One, they say, has given up his kingdom and his inheritance, and has found the path of righteousness, thus setting an example to all the world how to attain nirvana. My heart yearns to do what is right and to be a blessing unto my fellows. Let me then ask thee, must I give up my wealth, my home, and my business enterprises, and, like thyself, go into homelessness in order to attain the bliss of a religious life? And the Buddha replied, the bliss of a religious life is attainable by everyone who walks in the Noble Eightfold Path. He that cleaves to wealth had better cast it away than allow his heart to be poisoned by it. But he who does not cleave to wealth, and possessing riches, uses them rightly, will be a blessing unto his fellows. It is not life and wealth and power that enslave men, but the cleaving to life and wealth and power. The bhikkhu who retires from the world in order to lead a life of leisure will have no gain, for a life of indolence is an abomination, and lack of energy is to be despised. The Dharma of the Tathagata does not require a man to go into homelessness or to resign the world, unless he feels called upon to do so. But the Dharma of the Tathagata requires every man to free himself from the illusion of self, to cleanse his heart, to give up his thirst for pleasure, and lead a life of righteousness. And whatever men do, whether they remain in the world as artisans, merchants, and officers of the king, or retire from the world and devote themselves to a life of religious meditation, let them put their whole heart into their task. Let them be diligent and energetic, and, if they are like the lotus, which, although it grows in the water, yet remains untouched by the water, if they struggle in life without cherishing envy or hatred, if they live in the world not a life of self but a life of truth, then surely joy, peace, and bliss will dwell in their minds. The Sermon on Charity. Anathapindika rejoiced at the words of the Blessed One and said, I dwell at Savatthi, the capital of Kosala, a land rich in produce and enjoying peace. Pasenadi is the king of the country, and his name is renowned among our own people and our neighbors. Now I wish to found there a vihara which shall be a place of religious devotion for your brotherhood, and I pray you kindly to accept it. The Buddha saw into the heart of the supporter of orphans, and knowing that unselfish charity was the moving cause of his offer, in acceptance of the gift, the Blessed One said, the charitable man is loved by all. His friendship is prized highly. In death his heart is at rest and full of joy, for he suffers not from repentance. He receives the opening flower of his reward and the fruit that ripens from it. Hard it is to understand. By giving away our food, we get more strength. By bestowing clothing on others, we gain more beauty. By donating abodes of purity and truth, we acquire great treasures. There is a proper time and a proper mode in charity. Just as the vigorous warrior goes to battle, so is the man who is able to give. He is like an able warrior, a champion strong and wise in action. Loving and compassionate he gives with reverence and banishes all hatred, envy, and anger. The charitable man has found the path of salvation. He is like the man who plants a sapling, securing thereby the shade, the flowers, and the fruit in future years. Even so is the result of charity. Even so is the joy of him who helps those that are in need of assistance. Even so is the great nirvana. We reach the immortal path only by continuous acts of kindliness, and we perfect our souls by compassion and charity. Anathapindika invited Sariputta to accompany him on his return to Kosala and help him in selecting a pleasant site for the vihara. Jetavana, the vihara. Anathapindika, the friend of the destitute and the supporter of orphans, having returned home, saw the garden of the heir apparent, Jeta, with its green groves and limpid rivulets, and thought, "This is the place which will be most suitable as a vihara for the brotherhood of the Blessed One." And he went to the prince and asked leave to buy the ground. The prince was not inclined to sell the garden, for he valued it highly. He at first refused, but said at last, "If thou canst cover it with gold, then, and for no other price, shalt thou have it." Anathapindika rejoiced and began to spread his gold. But Jeta said, "Spare thyself the trouble, for I will not sell." But Anathapindika insisted. Thus they contended until they resorted to the magistrate. Meanwhile the people began to talk of the unwanted proceeding, and the prince, hearing more of the details and knowing that Anathapindika was not only very wealthy but also straightforward and sincere, inquired into his plans. On hearing the name of the Buddha, the prince became anxious to share in the foundation, and he accepted only 1/2 of the gold, saying, "Yours is the land, but mine are the trees. I will give the trees as my share of this offering to the Buddha." Then Anathapindika took the land and Jeta the trees, and they placed them in trust of Sariputta for the Buddha. After the foundations were laid, they began to build the hall, which rose loftily in due proportions according to the directions which the Buddha had suggested, and it was beautifully decorated with appropriate carvings. This vihara was called Jetavana, and the friend of the orphans invited the Lord to come to Savatthi and receive the donation. And the Blessed One left Kapilavatthu and came to Savatthi. While the Blessed One was entering Jetavana, Anathapindika scattered flowers and burned incense, and as a sign of the gift he poured water from a golden dragon decanter, saying, "This Jetavana vihara I give for the use of the brotherhood throughout the world." The Blessed One received the gift and replied, "May all evil influences be overcome. May the offering promote the kingdom of righteousness and be a permanent blessing to mankind in general, to the land of Kosala, and especially also to the giver." Then the king Pasenadi, hearing that the Lord had come, went in his royal equipage to the Jetavana vihara and saluted the Blessed One with clasped hands, saying, "Blessed is my unworthy and obscure kingdom that it has met with so great a fortune. For how can calamities and dangers befall it in the presence of the Lord of the world, the Dharmaraja, the King of Truth? Now that I have seen thy sacred countenance, let me partake of the refreshing waters of thy teachings. Worldly profit is fleeting and perishable, but religious profit is eternal and inexhaustible. A worldly man, though a king, is full of trouble, but even a common man who is holy has peace of mind." Knowing the tendency of the king's heart, weighed down by avarice and love of pleasure, the Buddha seized the opportunity and said, "Even those who, by their evil karma, have been born in low degree, when they see a virtuous man, feel reverence for him. How much more must an independent king, on account of merits acquired in previous existences, when meeting a Buddha, conceive reverence for him? And now, as I briefly expound the law, let the Maharaja listen and weigh my words, and hold fast that which I deliver. Our good or evil deeds follow us continually like shadows. That which is most needed is a loving heart. Regard thy people as mender an only son. Do not oppress them, do not destroy them. Keep in due check every member of thy body, forsake unrighteous doctrine and walk in the straight path. Exalt not thyself by trampling down others, but comfort and befriend the suffering. Neither ponder on kingly dignity, nor listen to the smooth words of flatterers. There is no profit in vexing oneself by austerities, but meditate on the Buddha and weigh his righteous law. We are encompassed on all sides by the rocks of birth, old age, disease, and death, and only by considering and practicing the true law can we escape from this sorrow-piled mountain. What profit, then, in practicing iniquity? All who are wise spurn the pleasures of the body. They loathe lust and seek to promote their spiritual existence. When a tree is burning with fierce flames, how can the birds congregate therein? Truth cannot dwell where passion lives. He who does not know this, though he be a learned man and be praised by others as a sage, is beclouded with ignorance. To him who has this knowledge true wisdom dawns, and he will beware of hankering after pleasure. To acquire this state of mind, wisdom is the one thing needful. To neglect wisdom will lead to failure in life. The teachings of all religions should center here, for without wisdom there is no reason. This truth is not for the hermit alone. It concerns every human being, priest and layman alike. There is no distinction between the monk who has taken the vows and the man of the world living with his family. There are hermits who fall into perdition, and there are humble householders who mount to the rank of rishis. Hankering after pleasure is a danger common to all. It carries away the world. He who is involved in its eddies finds no escape. But wisdom is the handy boat, reflection is the rudder. The slogan of religion calls you to overcome the assaults of Mara, the enemy. Since it is impossible to escape the result of our deeds, let us practice good works. Let us guard our thoughts that we do no evil, for as we sow, so shall we reap. There are ways from light into darkness and from darkness into light. There are ways, also, from the gloom into deeper darkness, and from the dawn into brighter light. The wise man will use the light he has to receive more light. He will constantly advance in the knowledge of truth, exhibit true superiority by virtuous conduct and the exercise of reason, meditate deeply on the vanity of earthly things, and understand the fickleness of life. Elevate the mind, and seek sincere faith with firm purpose. Transgress not the rules of kingly conduct, and let your happiness depend, not upon external things, but upon your own mind. Thus you will lay up a good name for distant ages and will secure the favor of the Tathagata. The king listened with reverence and remembered all the words of the Buddha in his heart. The three characteristics and the uncreated. When the Buddha was staying at the Vilavana, the bamboo grove at Rajagaha, He addressed the brethren thus: whether Buddhas arise, O priests, or whether Buddhas do not arise, it remains a fact and the fixed and necessary constitution of being that all confirmations are transitory. This fact a Buddha discovers and masters, and when he has discovered and mastered it, he announces, publishes, proclaims, discloses, minutely explains and makes it clear that all confirmations are transitory. Whether Buddhas arise, O priests, or whether Buddhas do not arise, it remains a fact and a fixed and necessary constitution of being, that all confirmations are suffering. This fact a Buddha discovers and masters, and when he has discovered and mastered it, he announces, publishes, proclaims, discloses, minutely explains and makes it clear that all confirmations are suffering. Whether Buddhas arise, O priests, or whether Buddhas do not arise, it remains a fact and a fixed and necessary constitution of being, that all confirmations are lacking a self. This fact a Buddha discovers and masters, and when he has discovered and mastered it, he announces, teaches, publishes, proclaims, discloses, minutely explains and makes it clear that all confirmations are lacking a self. And on another occasion the Blessed One dwelt at Savatthi in the Jetavana, the garden of Anathapindika. At that time the Blessed One edified, aroused, quickened and gladdened the monks with a religious discourse on the subject of nirvana. And these monks, grasping the meaning, thinking it out, and accepting with their hearts the whole doctrine, listened attentively. But there was one brother who had some doubt left in his heart. He arose and clasping his hands made the request, "May I be permitted to ask a question?" When permission was granted, he spoke as follows: "The Buddha teaches that all confirmations are transient, that all confirmations are subject to sorrow, that all confirmations are lacking a self. How then can there be nirvana, a state of eternal bliss?" And the Blessed One, this connection, on that occasion, breathed forth this solemn utterance: "There is, O monks, a state where there is neither earth, nor water, nor heat, nor air, neither infinity of space nor infinity of consciousness, nor nothingness, nor perception nor non-perception, neither this world nor that world, neither sun nor moon. It is the uncreate, that, O monks, I term neither coming nor going nor standing, neither death nor birth. It is without stability, without change. It is the eternal which never originates and never passes away. There is the end of sorrow. It is hard to realize the essential, the truth is not easily perceived. Desire is mastered by him who knows, and to him who sees aright all things are naught. There is, O monks, an unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, unformed. Were there not, O monks, this unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, unformed, there would be no escape from the world of the born, originated, created, formed. Since, O monks, there is an unborn, unoriginated, uncreated and unformed, therefore is there an escape from the born, originated, created, formed. The Buddha's father. The Buddha's name became famous over all India, and Suddhodana, his father, sent word to him saying, "I am growing old and wish to see my son before I die." Others have had the benefit of his doctrine, but not his father nor his relatives. And the messenger said, O world-honored Tathagata, thy father looks for thy coming as the lily longs for the rising of the sun. The Blessed One consented to the request of his father and set out on his journey to Kapilavatthu. Soon the tidings spread in the native country of the Buddha. Prince Siddhartha, who wandered forth from home into homelessness to obtain enlightenment, having attained his purpose, is coming back. Suddhodana went out with his relatives and ministers to meet the prince. When the king saw Siddhartha, his son, from afar, he was struck with his beauty and dignity, and he rejoiced in his heart, but his mouth found no words to utter. This, indeed, was his son. These were the features of Siddhartha. How near was the great Samana to his heart, and yet what a distance lay between them. That noble Muni was no longer Siddhartha, his son. He was the Buddha, the Blessed One, the Holy One, Lord of Truth, and Teacher of mankind. Suddhodana the king, considering the religious dignity of his son, descended from his chariot and after saluting his son said, It is now 7 years since I have seen thee. How I have longed for this moment. Then the Sakyamuni took a seat opposite his father, and the king gazed eagerly at his son. He longed to call him by his name, but he dared not. Siddhartha, he exclaimed silently in his heart, Siddhartha, come back to thine aged father and be his son again. But seeing the determination of his son, he suppressed his sentiments, and desolation overcame him. Thus the king sat face to face with his son, rejoicing in his sadness and sad in his rejoicing. Well might he be proud of his son, but his pride broke down at the idea that his great son would never be his heir. I would offer thee my kingdom, said the king, but if I did, thou wouldst account it but as ashes. And the Buddha said, I know that the king's heart is full of love and that for his son's sake he feels deep grief. But let the ties of love that bind him to the son whom he lost embrace with equal kindness all his fellow beings, and he will receive in his place a greater one than Siddhartha. He will receive the Buddha, the teacher of truth, the preacher of righteousness, and the peace of nirvana will enter into his heart. Suddhodana trembled with joy when he heard the melodious words of his son, the Buddha, and clasping his hands, exclaimed with tears in his eyes, Wonderful in this change. The overwhelming sorrow has passed away. At first my sorrowing heart was heavy, but now I reap the fruit of thy great renunciation. It was right that, moved by thy mighty sympathy, thou shouldst reject the pleasures of royal power and achieve thy noble purpose in religious devotion. Now that thou hast found the path, thou canst preach the law of immortality to all the world that yearns for deliverance. The king returned to the palace, while the Buddha remained in the grove before the city. Yasodhara, the former wife. On next morning the Buddha took his bowl and set out to beg his food. And the news spread abroad, Prince Siddhartha is going from house to house to receive alms in the city where he used to ride in a chariot attended by his retinue. His robe is like a red clod, and he holds in his hand an earthen bowl. On hearing the strange rumor, the king went forth in great haste, and when he met his son he exclaimed, Why dost thou thus disgrace me? Knowest thou not that I can easily supply thee and thy bhikkhus with food?" And the Buddha replied, "It is the custom of my race." But the king said, "How can this be? Thou art descended from kings, and not one of them ever begged for food." "O great king," rejoined the Buddha, "thou and thy race may claim descent from kings. My descent is from the Buddhas of old. They, begging their food, lived on alms." The king made no reply, and the Blessed One continued, "It is customary, O king, when one has found a hidden treasure, for him to make an offering of the most precious jewel to his father. Suffer me, therefore, to open this treasure of mine which is the Dharma, and accept from me this gem." And the Blessed One recited the following stanza: "Arise from dreams and delusions, awaken with open mind. Seek only truth, where you find it, peace also you will find." Then the king conducted the prince into the palace, and the ministers and all the members of the royal family greeted him with great reverence, but Yasodhara, the mother of Rahula, did not make her appearance. The king sent for Yasodhara, but she replied, "Surely, if I am deserving of any regard, Siddhartha will come and see me." The Blessed One, having greeted all his relatives and friends, asked, "Where is Yasodhara?" And on being informed that she had refused to come, he rose straightway and went to her apartments. "I am free," the Blessed One said to his disciples, Sariputta and Moggallana, whom he had bidden to accompany him to the princess's chamber. "The princess, however, is not as yet free. Not having seen me for a long time, she is exceedingly sorrowful. Unless her grief be allowed its course, her heart will cleave. Should she touch the Tathagata, the Holy One, ye must not prevent her." Yasodhara sat in her room, dressed in mean garments, and her hair cut. When Prince Siddhartha entered, she was, from the abundance of her affection, like an overflowing vessel, unable to contain her love. Forgetting that the man whom she loved was the Buddha, the Lord of the world, the preacher of truth, she held him by his feet and wept bitterly. Remembering, however, that Suttadana was present, she felt ashamed, and rising, seated herself reverently at a little distance. The king apologized for the princess, saying, "This arises from her deep affection, and is more than a temporary emotion. During the 7 years that she has lost her husband, when she heard that Siddhartha had shaved his head, she did likewise. When she heard that he had left off the use of perfumes and ornaments, she also refused their use. Like her husband, she had eaten at appointed times from an earthen bowl only. Like him, she had renounced high beds with splendid coverings, and when other princes asked her in marriage, she replied that she was still his. Therefore, grant her forgiveness." And the Blessed One spoke kindly to Yasodhara, telling of her great merits inherited from former lives. She had indeed been again and again of great assistance to him. Her purity, her gentleness, her devotion had been invaluable to the Bodhisattva when he aspired to attain enlightenment, the highest aim of mankind. And so holy had she been that she desired to become the wife of a Buddha. This, then, is her karma, and it is the result of great merits. Her grief has been unspeakable, but the consciousness of the glory that surrounds her spiritual inheritance increased by her noble attitude during her life, will be a balm that will miraculously transform all sorrows into heavenly joy. Rahula, the sun. Many people in Kapilavatthu believed in the Tathagata and took refuge in his doctrine, among them Nanda, Siddhartha's half-brother, the son of Pajapati, Devadatta, his cousin and brother-in-law, Upali the barber, and Aniruddha, the philosopher. Some years later, Ananda, another cousin of the Blessed One, also joined the Sangha. Ananda was a man after the heart of the Blessed One. He was his most beloved disciple, profound in comprehension and gentle in spirit. And Ananda remained always near the Blessed Master of Truth, until death parted them. On the seventh day after the Buddha's arrival in Kapilavatthu, Yasodhara dressed Rahula, now 7 years old, in all the splendor of a prince and said to him, "This holy man, whose appearance is so glorious that he looks like the great Brahma, is thy father. He possesses 4 great mines of wealth which I have not yet seen. Go to him and entreat him to put thee in possession of them, for the son ought to inherit the property of his father." Rahula replied, "I know of no father but the king. Who is my father?" The princess took the boy in her arms, and from the window she pointed out to him the Buddha, who happened to be near the palace, partaking of food. Rahula then went to the Buddha, and looking up into his face said without fear and with much affection, "My father." And standing near him, he added, "O Samana, even thy shadow is a place of bliss." When the Tathagata had finished his repast, he gave blessings and went away from the palace, but Rahula followed and asked his father for his inheritance. No one prevented the boy, nor did the Blessed One himself. Then the Blessed One turned to Sariputta, saying, "My son asks for his inheritance. I cannot give him perishable treasures that will bring cares and sorrows, but I can give him the inheritance of a holy life, which is a treasure that will not perish." Addressing Rahula with earnestness, the Blessed One said, "Gold and silver and jewels are not in my possession. But if thou art willing to receive spiritual treasures, and art strong enough to carry them and to keep them, I shall give thee the 4 truths which will teach thee the 8-fold path of righteousness. Dost thou desire to be admitted to the brotherhood of those who devote their life to the culture of the heart, seeking for the highest bliss attainable?" Rahula replied with firmness, "I do. I want to join the brotherhood of the Buddha." When the king heard that Rahula had joined the brotherhood of bhikkhus, he was grieved. He had lost Siddhartha and Nanda, his sons, and Devadatta, his nephew. But now that his grandson had been taken from him, he went to the Blessed One and spoke to him. And the Blessed One promised that from that time forward he would not ordain any minor without the consent of his parents or guardians.